Let's talk about porn, where he's like, yeah, your husband will love this.
Did anybody know?
I wrote a letter to my parents and I read it out loud to them. You know, my mom just being like, oh, I wish we would have known. I wish we would have, you know, you could have told us or we could have been there. Let's talk about porn.
You were waiting for that. You were waiting to say that.
You guys have no idea. We're going to be saying porn 100 times.
I hope we don't get banned or anything like that.
All right.
So, but one thing I want you to make sure of, because I got to tell people this a lot, is while you're sharing your story, don't worry about what people in the comments are saying, because people will just hop on and just say things to kind of throw you off. After you're finished, then we'll look at the comments and kind of like, you know, go from there. But make sure if we have to say it, let's say like corn or something like that, just because the algorithms, it can like report us and kick us off live.
Okay.
So Chris may be joining in the middle of while you're sharing. If he does, just continue going on, and I think we really need to hear your story. So
yeah,
go ahead and share who you are, what you do. I know you were on a couple weeks ago about the If You Know, You Know dating, but what is this Storm and Armor? What is that, and what is the story behind that?
Yeah. So the short and quick of it is I am a pastor's kid, have always been a pastor's kid, and was addicted to porn. I don't think I would have called it addicted when I was watching in high school and college. I was like, I mean, nobody knew, so it was a shameful secret that I had, but it was something that I would do, but I would do it often and want to do it and only be thinking about it. So obviously getting out of it, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that was an addiction. So I think what was the trickiest part, and we can dive into obviously any piece of the story, but my dad would be on stage, you know, as my pastor saying, hey men, we know you're struggling with porn. Hey guys, we've got a small group for you boys who need accountability. And so I would kind of just be sitting in the audience hearing my own dad, you know, kind of advertise for the boys, this male issue. And I would be thinking, oh my gosh, I have a boy struggle. I have a boy sin. And so since getting out of it and since like really experiencing the Lord's redemption and restoration and freedom and healing, I've gotten so passionate about just being really vocal, especially for women. Really, because I don't want them to know that they're alone. I don't want ever a girl in any room to ever think, oh my gosh, I'm the only girl watching. Because it is actually, you know, 1 in every 3 women are viewing porn regularly. Women just don't talk about it the way guys do. The way I kind of compare it is like with body image. Girls, you know, we talk about body image, we talk about our weight, we talk about all of that, whereas guys don't talk about that as much. But sure, they can still struggle with body image. They can still have, you know, perception of their weight or their muscle tone or whatever. They just don't talk about it the open way that girls do. So we see that a lot with porn, whereas guys will talk porn. They all know that everyone struggles with it. But girls, it's this very shame. It's this very, we don't talk about this. So I have gotten vocal and proud, just because the Lord has taken away all of the shame. I live in zero shame about it now. So I will be on a stage and I'll say the corn word 100 times. I will go on lives and talk about it. I mentor girls now through it. I run a recovery ministry. So I am loud and proud about being a recovered addict, a recovered porn addict. And my big mission is just to chat with girls, to allow girls to be seen and heard, and give them resources and just let them know that they are not alone.
Wow. I got a question. Why do you think it's so hard for women to talk about it?
But hey, before you get into the question, I hear a little bit of an echo.
For me?
I don't know if the
For
iPad
me?
is still on.
iPad is off. How's that?
I guess we'll go and we'll see.
Good for me.
Good.
Okay, cool.
Why do you think it's so hard for women to talk about it as compared to men?
I think it's just cultural. It's culturally more acceptable for guys to talk about it. I mean, you hear about, oh, it's the locker room talk. It's the, you know, and even churches, a lot of times they do the advertisement, they do the small groups, they talk about accountability. But I think even like youth leaders or young adult leaders or pastors are now starting to realize, oh, this is a women issue too, and we're not addressing it the way we have or the way we should have been. So I think just it's a cultural thing where we don't think it's we don't think it's a girl issue. We don't think it's a girl sin, but pornography is actually a human sin.
Yeah. Definitely.
So what actually got you into it, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, no problem. So being the pastor's kid, I had the purity ring. I did the whole like I'm gonna wait to have sex until marriage. All of my friends, or a lot of my friends, were having sex. 16, 17 years old. We heard the guys talking about porn, and we're like, why would people watch porn? That's so weird. What? That's so strange. And then as a group of girls, we went and we watched. And we're kind of, making fun of it. And the girls are all laughing a little bit. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so intriguing to me. And of course, that's right when the enemy is starting to get those lies in, where he's like, yeah, your husband will love this. You'll be so educated. You'll know what you're doing. You're not having sex, so this is good. This is better than sex. This is less sinful than sex. So this will help get you knowledgeable. This will help educate you. Your husband is gonna love that you watch this. Like, it's all these lies that, in healthy days, I wouldn't believe them. But most days I was like, yep, yeah, you're right. Yeah, my husband will love this. So it kind of started as that intriguing, I believed the lies. And then that's what kind of coiled it into an addiction of, oh, I'm at volleyball practice, but all I can think about is getting home and watching porn.
So was that that thought of like, oh, I'm technically doing research. Was that just an excuse because you really wanted to watch it, or was it really the driving factor? There was really fear of thinking, what if I don't know what to do? This is really going to help me.
No, I think it was just an excuse to tell myself the reason why I'm watching is for education. But of course, like, I wanted the high that it brings.
Wow. Do you think it kind of affected the way that you interacted with men at all?
I don't know if it. I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did in some way. I mean, I am still, by the grace of Jesus, physically a virgin, emotionally and mentally very far from it, and wish I could, I wish I didn't experience the things I did on wedding night, where, on wedding night, I wish I would be like, wow, I'm this pure, innocent girl. Whereas, yes, physically I'll be a virgin, praise Jesus, but mentally and emotionally, I've seen it all. I've experienced a lot. But I think in terms of interaction, I mean, I had a lot of guy friends, but I was very attention seeking with guys. I really wanted to be dating. I wanted the attention. I would do this, but not this. I won't have sex, but I'll do this. So I had really loose boundaries sexually. And I think too, what it affected the most was just, I had a very skewed perception of sex, of what sex should be between husband and wife. Because I knew I wanted to wait until marriage. I knew that was something that, never really got dismantled, but it for sure made me think like, oh yeah, pool boy next door, that's totally real life. That, I'm watching all these fantasy scenes, and that's not real life. And interesting, a difference I've found between male and female porn addictions. Guys are very or so I've heard. They want to watch something quick. They know what they want, they know what they want to see, whereas girls want the story. We want to see, the full 10 minutes. We want to build it up. We want the romance. And that's why, women do the romance novels and they read the romance novels, because that is a form of soft corn, of just
Yeah.
kind of like getting that story and romancing. That's just, women are emotional and we need that. We want that built up. Whereas guys and what they're searching and what they're watching is usually not the 10-minute scene.
Right. And you know what's interesting is I was just talking, Chris, you and I were talking about this yesterday, about how men and women are different when it comes to attraction. And I had a conversation with someone years ago about back at Troy, about how, like, we always wondered why, why there's this plot, in those videos. Why is there like stepdad's out of town and, the maid is cleaning the house this week. You know what I mean? Like, and from what most guys just like, just to skip to the action. Where does it get okay, there we go. And it's like towards the end of the video or whatever. And it just shows that the enemy isn't just trying to attack men, but he's trying to attack both men and women. And I guess that makes a lot of sense now when you look back on it. It's like, because a lot of those storylines are like stupid. Like you said, like, the pizza guy that
Pizza
shows
boy,
up
yeah.
at at like a sorority party, and then I don't know. It's just it's never made sense to me. But now that you say that, and when you look at how men and women are attracted differently, it makes a lot of sense. Now that you say that. Do you think that it? I wrote down a bunch of questions just because I figured this is something that a lot of people are going to need to hear, and I think you have a really powerful testimony. You said it didn't change how you interacted with men. Did it change on how you looked or viewed men or guys?
Oh yeah.
When you're
Yeah,
growing
I
up?
think in this can be a little controversial. I know statistically or whatever, scientifically, guys' sex drives can be higher, whatever. But I think a lot of times they're always like, oh, guys, man, they undress women with their eyes. Oh, they're so lustful. They have such, with their human flesh, they're such lustful human beings. And it's like, I was finding myself, I think, because watching porn and having all of that intake of all of these images and all of these triggers, like I would see attractive guys, and immediately I'm like, what do they look like naked? What do they? And it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who that poor guy is, and here I am trying to visualize what he looks like, or being like, wow, I'm feeling a certain way around this guy, and I shouldn't because I don't know him. And it's just the repetition of images, and my brain knew, hey, when it sees this is how we react, this is what we do, this is the dopamine hit we release. And so it was like, whoa, they keep talking about guys and their sex drives, but I'm finding myself like feeling pretty charged at all times. And I think a lot of that goes to just the input of porn.
So let me ask you this, because like I said, this is the first time, besides last week or 2 weeks ago when you kind of explained a little bit about this. This is the first time I've actually spoken with a woman who says that she was addicted to it or watched it on a regular basis, like a lot of guys do. So, but I still know that the wiring, like we said, is different. So when you say, oh, you would see an attractive guy, so it made your sex level as high as the guy's, you said a guy that you're attracted to, for example, or these features things like, oh, confidence, he's smart, he has all these other things, or was it purely physical? Like, for example, a guy that's like a porn head is going to see a girl with big boobs, and he's like, oh, I wonder what those are like. He doesn't care if it's his hair color, if it's the hair color type he likes, if she's, confident or any of these other things. For you, if it was some, the nerdy kid wearing the gray sweatpants or whatever, was it purely physical, or was it other things like, oh, I just like his confidence, his charisma, and that's what caused you to think that way, if that makes sense.
Purely physical. Yeah, I wouldn't know a thing about them, even if they're like walking all confident, or if they're walking timid, if they were attractive, or if they reminded me of someone that I saw in a video, or, you know, whatever that like reminder or trigger was, I'm immediately turned on.
Interesting. Wow.
But now I'm attracted to confidence. Now I'm attracted to humor. Now, you know.
Right. And so I mean, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but do you think that the porn kind of messed up the way that you naturally would look at men and be attracted to men, and it made you almost view it the way men kind of do for a little bit, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was the influence of the images is what was making me view men that way, like a piece of meat.
So I have a question, and this is not my personal question, but this question for just anybody that tunes in that's not, you know, that doesn't necessarily, because I've had this discussion before, like some people don't really see porn as like a sin, right? Or they don't see really a problem with it. So just from your words or your, you know, how you can explain it, what is the problem with watching porn and masturbating and doing those things, whether you're a man or a woman?
Yeah. I get that a lot. That's probably the biggest pushback I get with, you know, not seeing an issue with either that or masturbation. Hey, what's the issue? What's the sin? Why is this bad? And I think the best way for me to explain it or talk it out is the way that you are feeling, what you are experiencing is something that the Lord designed for you to do with your spouse under the covenant of marriage. You know, just to feel what you're feeling, whether you're getting an orgasm, whether you're not, and seeing these images and seeing, you know, feeling the way you're feeling. You're living in this very fantasy world. Typically, I don't know many people who watch porn in a group or masturbate in a group. It's usually a very isolated thing. It's drawing you into yourself. It's kind of hiding it in the corner, in the closet, in the room. So you're isolated. You're doing this alone. You're experiencing all of these things up here through your eyes, in your heart, down there. And you're feeling a certain way that I believe this fantasy world that is tricking you and giving you a completely counterfeit view of what love is and what sex is, rather than marriage, where sex is really beautiful and really good under the covenant of marriage. And this is reality. And this is when you're supposed to feel this way. You're with another human. It's this design that the Lord created for us to have with another human being, rather than images, rather than, you know, watching. I mean, I could even get into all of the human sex trafficking that's involved in porn. It's like, rather than watching it and trying to live through people doing it and get off to that, this was designed between you and another human being. This was supposed to be for you and another human.
Yeah.
Somebody sent in a question, but I'd like to get into this after she kind of expresses all her thoughts and her story and everything as well. But did anybody know? And I know you said you kind of felt like no one really knew for a long time. When did you open up, and who did you open up to, and what was the reaction you were expecting, and what did you get?
Yeah, I'm really vocal about this piece. Because I think, again, like the enemy wants us to be so scared to tell people. You know, the lies that I was hearing was, don't tell anyone. They're going to think you're weird. They're going to think you're gross. They don't want to know this about you. You're not watching anymore, so you don't need to tell anyone. You got out of this addiction. You don't need to tell anyone. And I really had to fight that, because I felt the heaviness of it still. I felt the shame of it, even though I was out of it and wasn't viewing anymore. And so the first time I told people. It was a small group that I was in about a year and a half after. And I just sobbed the whole time. They didn't understand me. They didn't know what I was saying. I was like, I watched porn. I had an addiction. They still couldn't really hear me because I was crying through every other word. So I think opening up to them and seeing their support and seeing their love of like, hey, we love you. We're here for you. Like, let us hold you accountable. Bring us into this. Was really special. And I wish I would have had that accountability as I was in my near term of getting out. When I was just trying to get out with, obviously Jesus pulled me out, but I had no accountability. Nobody knew. It was me and him. And so I'm really big about tell people, bring people in, because it's beautiful to see the response of, no, we don't think different of you. You need help. And thank you for asking for help. The darkness is exposed. Like immediately after I told that group, I was like, I need to tell more people. Like the shame was diminishing. The darkness was being exposed. I wrote a letter to my parents and I read it out loud to them, again, crying. I've gotten to a point now where I don't cry just because I have so much freedom and no shame over it anymore. But just reading that letter to my parents and talking to my parents and, my mom just being like, oh, I wish we would have known. I wish we would have, you could have told us, or we could have been there. We could have helped. My dad is even like, this was happening in my own house. And I was, we thought we were doing the right things. We thought we had the right protection on the computer. We thought we were, checking the history as often as we should. And to hear from them, like, we love you and we wish we could have helped prevent this, or we could have helped your fight with this, was just something that, again, made me wish I had brought people in sooner. And it was really shame silencing me from bringing anyone in. So again, that's what I am so big on. Like, please, if you're struggling with this, if you feel like you can't get out, if you're feeling like people are going to think different of you, I promise you they're not. I think if someone told me, hey, I'm struggling with alcohol, I would not think different of them. I would be like, I love you. How can I help you? How can I support you? How can I help lead you to recovery? And so I think, again, the enemy just gets in our head of, oh no, they don't know. They're going to think you're gross. They're not going to be your friend anymore. Like, my parents embraced me and loved me. And they're like, we support you. Oh, you want to do a ministry now about porn recovery? How can we support? How can we be involved? I did a sit down video with my dad where I'm like, okay, Dad, here we go. Let's talk about it. And so to see the response and the love from people, I promise you that's what you're going to get. So if you are struggling, to get out of an addiction alone is next to impossible. Bring people in, expose the shame, expose the darkness.
And I think that was great that you said that, because I think the devil kind of restricts us, or keeps us from, expressing our testimony, because once we do, now, like, we have to move forward. You know what I mean? Because now we have help. Now Christians are gonna be like, hey, no, whatever you need, I'm gonna hold you accountable. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. So there's no turning back at that point, right? Because you've already expressed that this is what I've been struggling with, this is what I'm trying to move on with. So now, like, once you put it out in the light, it's like, okay, I'm moving forward with this 100%. I also have a question of, like, and this is your perspective, like, because men and women are obviously dealing with this, and especially with this, stuff is on your phone, your iPad, is everywhere, right? How do we protect our children from being infected? Because, like, once it's hooked, I know for me, once I was young and that hook got in, it just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper, right? And then it was dang near impossible to get out of it. So, like, how do we protect our children from, diving into that when it's literally everywhere?
Yeah. I don't have children yet, and I'm still years away from that, which is great, but I'm sure it'll be even worse by then. So maybe it's right. I think for me, in conversations I've had, is my parents, we had a very open relationship. We had a very loving relationship. But it was never a conversation we had. I had the sex talk with Mom, but never pornography, never masturbation, again, because I wasn't a boy. My brother got it, but I didn't get it. And so I think knowing how much it affected my life and how much it skewed my perception, it stole years of my life. I'm really, really, I want to be prayerful and strategic with it. But I think even at kids are being introduced to it. The average age pornography is being introduced is 11 years old. So I want to
11.
I
get
thought I was gonna say 14 or something.
I was
no
gonna say like
11.
16.
That's young.
I know it's like 11. I didn't even know how to spell my name. Like what? So seeing kids get involved now at 11, I want them to hear it from me before they hear it from school, before they see it from school. So I think for me, it'll look like just a conversation of, hey, I want to let you know what I struggled with and what stole years of my life. I want to be so straight up with you, and I'm telling you this, and I'm bringing you in on this because of the mistakes that I made and the hurt that I caused myself, the hurt that I caused my future husband, the hurt, just the weight that I, have obviously broken off. I've broken off the shame. I've broken off the soul tie. But really getting ahead of that for my kid and hoping that that teaches them, that draws them closer to Jesus and not wanting to burn. Because I think my dad did that with sex, and he had shared with me, hey, I had sex with women before your mom, and this is what I learned, and this is why I wouldn't do that, and this is why like sex with your mom was actually the best sex that I had, because we waited to marriage, and the Lord really redeemed my sex life. Which again, I was very open with my family, just not about porn. So I think hearing that from my dad and having that open relationship with him about, his sex life and wanting to wait to have sex until marriage, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I do want to wait to have sex until marriage. And so if that would have also been the conversation with pornography, would I have ever gotten involved? I don't know.
Mm.
It was kind of just that taboo, that I want that.
Yeah.
Was there because you seem like a really open person, and we just get real on here.
Bring it on.
Was it an addiction to masturbation and the feel of that, or was it an addiction to just watching, and you just watched and it was more of a mental, emotional type of thing?
I would say I never masturbated without porn. So I did I wanted the story, I wanted the images, I wanted the emotional piece. But what kept going back, I believe, was the orgasm.
I got a question too. You said you've had like other sexual experiences without actually like penetrating, without the actual penetration. Do you think that your addiction to porn kind of affected like when you would get intimate with men in real life?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think too, I mean, and that would be something when I dated guys during my addiction. I would tell them, I mean, right away, hey, I'm not having sex until I'm married. These are my boundaries. That was my only boundary pretty much, but I'm not doing that. I had guys break up with me because of that. I had, although I was the pastor's kid, there was that stint about when I was watching porn where I believed in God. I just he was not a priority. He wasn't a priority, even though, I was going to church, I was singing on the praise team. But I had my own little secret life. I had my own little, isolated addiction. I think with that though, once I got out of that and really excelled my relationship with Jesus, that has completely changed my boundaries, my sexual boundaries. Whereas, yes, I'm still not having sex until marriage, but also I'm not going to go beyond kissing before marriage, because I believe all of that can be saved by my husband too. And I think when I was dating during addiction and I wasn't having sex, my release was going home to watch porn and imagine sex being with them. So it's so unfair for that.
Explain that one more time. You said when you were dating, I lost that for a second.
So dating, not having sex, saying, hey, I'm not having sex until I'm married. Fooling around doing other stuff, but then going home and watching porn and, you know, getting my that way.
Gotcha.
And being like, oh, it's like, you know, visualizing them, picturing them, but I'm in the dark in my basement by myself.
Yeah, that's
basically. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's man, it's crazy because that's literally, I guess that's just how my flesh kind of justified it too, right? You know, being a virgin and kind of waiting until you get married, and you know, the enemy tries to say, oh well, you know, at least you're not having sex,
Right.
right? At least you're not doing all these other different things. So it kind of you try to justify it of like, oh well, this is not as bad, right? But essentially you're doing the same thing. Your heart is doing the same thing. Your mind is doing the same thing. You're just not doing it with another person, right? So yeah, I relate to that 100% because I literally did the same thing myself.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot with I mentor a lot of girls. So it's funny when people are like, "Yeah, I didn't know girls struggled." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I mentor like hundreds of girls I know." But I also know just because girls are more open with it or reach out or DM me. But a lot of the girls that I mentor, you know, if they have a crush on a guy, they have like extremely intimate, sexual, lustful thoughts about them. And it's saying, okay, like, is this a sin? Yes or no? And let's dive into that. Is that fair that you're bringing that guy who's just your crush into this emotional, intimate place in your heart, in your head, and now you're watching porn and you're picturing that person? So it's for the women emotional too, just with like crushes and justifying. Okay, I'm not having sex with them, but mentally you're absolutely having sex with them.
Question: like when you first recognize that this was a bad habit, I gotta kick it. I need deliverance from it, right? Can you kind of talk us through that process of you know, getting to that point? Was it like a quick, because some people, God delivered to you and you don't never think about it again. Some it's a process, some it's like, man, I gotta, kick this out before I get married. Like, so just kind of tell us your personal process through getting to the point where you are today.
Yeah. So I was in it probably 2 to 3 years. But I would say the first few, maybe the fifth time that I watched it after I was past the like, wow, this is so interesting. What am I watching? Oh my gosh, this is a free website and I can search whatever I want whenever I want. Whoa. After I got kind of past the intrigueness of it, when it started settling into me of like, whoa, wow, I'm craving this now. Now I'm thinking about this when I'm at school. That's when it started becoming kind of this, oh, this is wrong. I feel that this is wrong in my spirit. I know this is wrong. As soon as I'm done watching, I feel intense shame, intense guilt. And now knowing, like, of course, those are not characters of Jesus. So all of that weight that I was feeling was absolutely from porn, absolutely from the enemy. So for those 2-3 years, from time 5 or 6, the fifth or sixth view, I'm like, I gotta get out. I gotta stop this. How am I gonna stop this? Okay, I'm gonna wean myself off. Okay, I'm just gonna watch once this week. Okay, shoot, I just relapsed. Let's try twice this week. Okay, and I'm just trying to build these like milestones. I'm praying. I'm crying. I don't know how many times I cried after watching porn. Being done, it's done. I orgasmed, and then it all hits you, and you're like,
What the heck?
was
Yeah.
that worth it? Was that 5 seconds?
Couple seconds. Right. Right.
So I think it was like that time and time and time again. And that's, one of the biggest things that I talk to my girls about is I did not have any accountability. I did not have, my girls, it's a mentor group. So they have each other, they're calling each other, they're texting each other. They've got the apps, the protection software. I didn't do any of that. And I was just, crying out to God, praying, weaning myself off. And then I went to a Christian college that had very protected internet. Like you can even go on Victoria's Secret website to buy a bathing suit. So it was like very protected. That really helped I couldn't watch it. and I'm like, okay, if only I can make it until fall break and I get home. If only I can make it to Christmas break and then I'll be home. And so having kind of the big, long breaks where I couldn't unless, I mean, I had a BlackBerry, and BlackBerries back then didn't really do fast videos. So I really had, you know, accessibility was not there. I couldn't. And so having that time span between viewings helped kind of just build the toughness of my brain. And that's a big thing I talk about with girls, and just rerouting that thought pattern and getting your brain, you know, it's triggered by this, but instead of saying, yes, this is what you're going to get, let's go over here. Let's go for a walk. Let's get on the ground and do 10 push-ups. Let's find a friend, call her, and grab coffee right now. So just switching our thought patterns, switching what our, you know, the dopamine knows it wants to hit, but how else can we get this dopamine hit? How can we retrain our brain? And so again, for me, it was just a lot of prayer in Jesus, and timing things out and kind of building cadences and weaning off of it like you would a drug or alcohol. But my number one recommendation is accountability. Bring people in, tell people, have someone that you can call any hour of any day.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to the person that that maybe hasn't had sex, or they're waiting till marriage? They've had sex and now they're trying to wait till marriage, but they watch porn in the meantime, and they're saying to themselves, oh, I'll just stop whenever I get married.
Good question.
Easier said than done. I think if they, one, it's never okay. But I don't think you can just turn it off and say, okay, yep, now it's time to stop. I think when you are watching porn, you are cheating on something. Whether if I'm single, I'm single. I'm not married. If I were to get back into porn and start watching porn again, I am cheating on my future husband. I am cheating on my identity. I am cheating on, you know, being the daughter of Christ. And so starting to perceptionize it that way, start seeing like, hey, the more that I watch this, the more that I fill my brain with this, the more that I'm carrying into my marriage, the more ideas and idolizations and fantasies I'm bringing into my marriage that then we have to deal with. Like, I've already got a lot of that I got to deal with my husband, my someday husband. Again, thank you, Jesus. There's no shame, and there's lots of forgiveness and lots of grace. But it's still absolutely something we're going to have to deal with and talk through and work through. And there's a big chance he had a porn addiction too. So just figuring out what that looks like and how to operate with that. But I think what's scary about I'll turn it off when marriage starts. I don't think you'll be able to turn it off that quickly. I think it takes a great deal to get out of a porn addiction. And when porn is involved in a marriage, the infidelity rate increases by 300%. So if you are watching porn and you are married, you are 300 times more likely to cheat. I think it's immediate. You want to be satisfied right then and there. Maybe, you know, the spouse didn't do it for you, so you can go ahead and get your high, get your orgasm right then and there. And that's going to be that convenience. You're going to want to go back to that convenience and that accessibility. And that is what's going to make it really easy to cheat with the screen, and then to cheat with another human being.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I think you sharing the fact that you, I don't want to say you, but you and God overcame that together, just you two. I think that should give a lot of people hope, you know,
yeah.
that you really don't need all the softwares and everything, but if you have access to it, then you really can overcome it. And I think the fact is that a lot of people don't believe it's possible to overcome. I think that there is this lie that this is going to be with you forever. You just need to kind of tame it as much as you can and then just live with it. And I think that you're an example of how that's not the case. You did it without the help of all these other things. It was just you and God, which is really probably the strongest tool there is, really.
Right.
That's a I mean, do we want to touch on some of these questions in the
Yeah,
comments? That
yeah. I was just gonna. She's only gonna be able to be on for so long, so I wanted
okay.
to just make sure she got everything out before we answer some of those. But I do have
Yeah,
one
I have
last thing.
still 5:45, so I still have about 30 minutes.
Okay, awesome. So there was a question that me and Chris were talking about this yesterday when we were talking about some of the psychology differences between men and women. I was looking at some studies, and I found an interesting study, and I'll ask you the question, then I'll explain the why after. But
Okay.
when you were watching this, when you were watching, were you just watching guys? Were you watching guys and girls together, or were you watching just sometimes only a woman? Or was it anything in particular?
Yeah, it was all man and woman sex. And like other stuff too, but I never got into the like girl on girl or guy on guy or just single girl or single guy. It was always like male female sex and then some. Cool
The only
boy.
reason I asked that, I mean, it's all sin regardless. But the only reason I asked that was because there was a study talking about how a lot of times men, because we're visual anyway, men are naturally kind of repulsed by some of those other things. And it's just I don't want to say normal because porn is not normal, but it's almost the basic stuff. And so since you're the first person I've talked to that's experienced this, that's a woman, I was just curious about if that was, the case for you or not. So you answered it. We don't need to go any deeper.
What do guys lean towards?
It said, so the study showed that if it's a heterosexual male, he is into heterosexual corn. I don't want to say it too much because algorithm and stuff. And if it's a homosexual male, he's into the homosexual stuff. But
Okay.
it's not typically like a lot of crossover. It's very rigid, and like he likes what he likes, and that's it. And then I found that I thought it interesting that the study said that women, it's more storyline and all these other kinds of things that is just different than us. So that's the reason for the question.
Okay. That's interesting.
Quick question. So like, how do you see it in terms of like being married, right? Like, do you think it's okay to watch it within a marriage? Like, what's your kind of perspective on that?
Yeah, I went
Yeah.
ahead and pinned one of the questions. That's something someone also asked. I want them to know their question. They said, "Do you think
Yeah, a
porn
couple
is
people asked it, actually. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think that that's a big thing that something that a lot of people try to justify. Hey, well, if I'm married and we're watching it together and it's giving us ideas, I think again that's just playing into the enemy wanting to to feed you lies to say, hey, here's an excuse to watch something new or to bring excitement. I think I've just learned so much about porn in the industry and what goes into making these videos, the exploitation of children. Half of the videos that we're watching, consent was not had. So now knowing as much as I know about just the production of these videos, how much they're making, how many people don't want to be in it, or even what is the National Center for Missing Exploited Children, which serves as like the clearinghouse child pornography reports in the U.S. receives an average of 1 million reports each. So you see a lot of this of like missing foster kids or all of these XYZ stats. So much of like pornography production is not done with consent, is not done. I don't believe morally, and I also don't believe that's. And I know this is controversial, but if I sat God down and said, "Hey, do you want your people filming people having sex to help guide other couples, and give them insight and give them experience and practice?" I don't think he would say yes. But I know that's also not in the Bible per se. I don't think, you know, it's sexual temptations and lustful thinking. I just think it opens up the can of worms for a married couple if they're saying, hey, yeah, we're going to watch it together. I have a hard time believing they're not watching it separate.
What about people that you may be about to ask the same question, Chris, but I've heard a lot of people that have brought up the idea of, like, it's popular now, where it's kind of culturally popular. Hey, we're making videos of ourselves and we're watching it on our own, or we're watching it together. What's your thoughts on that? Is that what you're going to ask, Chris?
No. I mean, I was going a different way, but no, that's a good question. That's a great question.
Like they're kind of doing their own home video type of thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
sex tape just for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion either, you know, on as long as it's not being distributed, and if that's something is fun to do as a couple. You know, sure, I like to bake brownies, but if you want to record yourself and then watch it, I guess ask the Lord what he thinks about it.
I guess my thought is you're almost objectifying your spouse by even doing that and watching it yourself. You're kind of viewing it as you're not with that person. You're with an image of who you're trying to kind of view that person as.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's my thought on it. What were you about to say, Chris?
Well, my question was, so like, from what I hear, obviously I'm not married or anything like that either. But like, you know, there's people that struggle with sexual compatibility to a certain extent, right? And getting the most pleasure within a marriage, right? So obviously we've already addressed, like, you know, watching porn together, but like, what about in situations where, like, you know, maybe you need like a sex therapist, right? Or maybe you need to, I guess, just learn certain aspects. Because I know for me, obviously I don't have no experience in that area to a certain extent. So like learning myself and learning her on that level is going to all be new, right? Mm-hmm. So do you think it's necessarily wrong for somebody to kind of get coaching through that within the marriage? Or is that a bad? I don't know, because, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the questions I get from my friends who you know aren't wanting to wait to have sex until marriage, and they're like, don't you want to try it before you buy it? Like, what if sex is really bad? And my thing is always, yeah, the first time it's probably be pretty bad. The first few months, maybe the first year, you know.
Oh, I hope not. Yeah, I bet.
My mom had to have a surgery, which TMI, but she was like too small. So
wait, what?
She like
wait, what? Wait a minute. What happened?
Well, because like, wow, sex is so painful. This is so painful. Wow, is this supposed to be enjoyable? This is so painful. And so then 2 years into marriage, she had my brother, and they're like, you're too small. We got to C-section this guy. And then when they C-sectioned him, they were like, hey, by the way, like, is sex comfortable for you? Like, you're very, very petite down there. And she was like, no, it's very painful. And they're like, 2 years into marriage, it should not still be painful. So they ended up like doing some surgery to make the hole a little bit bigger. And then I came 5 years later, and I was in natural birth. So they must have made it big enough.
She was a virgin or what?
So I hear stories like that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, of course it was, you know, this virgin mom has no idea what she's doing and what she's feeling. But I think, you know, after a first few months, I've had friends who, hey, it's still really painful. I'm still really tight. You know, there's like a sex massage therapist where they would get a clinical doctor who's like massaging to loosen up, you know, our bodies. I'm 30. My body's going to have no idea what to do. It's going to be like, wait, date for 30 years.
What'd you say, C-Love?
My wife isn't going to no massage.
Massage therapy. C-Love said, I'm going to do it.
Nah, she's not doing that.
Well, if it helps her loosen up, maybe.
How do you know? Well,
but you see, those are
Okay,
some of the
pelvic floor
questions,
physical
you
therapist.
know.
There it is. Pelvic floor physical therapist.
Mm.
But you see, that's what I'm saying. So like sometimes, like I feel like, the more I just kind of study and stuff, and I've had conversations with sex therapists to a certain extent. There's a lot of information, right, that is valuable, right? Now and it's really hard to kind of tailor it to be like, well, like where's that line, right? Because especially if you've been struggling with porn or anything, it could jump from here to here real quick, right? But like when you're in a marriage, there's like knowledge that might help you, please your partner and vice versa. So sometimes I'm just always kind of curious of like how to discern what's like real valuable information and what's along the line of going to be sinful within that marriage and stuff.
I do think as a married person here,
The only married person.
I do think porn does put a lot of expectations that are not. It's like expectations that you've got to be some like there's just some magic technique that this and this, that, like, at the end of the day, there's how many people on this earth? 7 billion?
Right.
It's been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It can't be that complicated. Now, if you guys have a chance, check out this Netflix documentary. It's called Hot Girls Wanted. I don't know if you've seen it before, but it goes behind the scenes of porn, and it shows how the production is, and they tell them like, okay, so you're going to be this angle, you're going to be like this, and then just like scream like crazy. And then the guy, you do this. Like they're literally actors. They are not, like this idea that you got to do this technique and then you're going to drive her wild. Like, hey, I do, and I don't watch all these other crazy types of things. You know what I mean? So
okay,
I think you'll be, I think you'll be fine. And I think there's only so much, like, if you really think about the physical act, there's only so much you can do at a certain point. How much research?
You think though?
How much research do you really need?
Zach, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I don't know. From what the information I've gained, I think it's just deeper than just penetration, right? Especially with women. Like you can stimulate them from head to toe without even penetrating them.
I get
right?
that. So, I get that. But I'm just saying, I'm just wondering, where does and we don't want to take up all your time talking about this because we will go into this in a minute more, but where does porn have any positive having to do with that? Because porn is not him stimulating her mentally in all these other ways. It's usually like, you want sausage or pepperoni pizza? Open the box and find out. It's a lot of stupid stuff that isn't even realistic. And so, but I do want to get to these other questions while we have you on, because I think you really have a good you'll be able to answer these because a lot of them are directed towards you. One of them was, how long were you addicted? And you did mention what your breaking point was, but how long were you addicted and what was your breaking point?
2 to 3 years, off and on, and mainly on. And breaking point, like I mentioned, happened a few views in where I was just like, I'm done. And then it was 2-3 years of relapse. I want to be done. Relapse. I want to be done. And just that cycle of addiction, the cycle of, it is a mental illness. I think it's given me a lot more compassion for when someone's an alcoholic or someone's a drug addict. I get it. You don't want to do it, but you set up all of these things. I had all of these like Post-it sticky notes like on my computer. It was our home computer that I was doing all of this on. I would turn it off, and computers used to take 10 minutes to reboot. I'd do all of this stuff, try to set myself up to like, okay, you got 10 minutes to say no. But then boom, you know exactly what you want, and you go into autopilot, and there you are in front of the computer watching porn. So, I mean, it's definitely a mental illness. An addiction has a mind of its own. But But I think the breaking point was, again, happened views within the start of the addiction. But I finally got the strength about 3 years later to finally, you know, fully release from it. But even once I was out of it, everything was a trigger. Like the store Spencer's, I go in because there was sex toys. You know,
The what?
there is a store in the Midwest called Spencer's.
Yeah,
You guys,
that's everywhere.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got Spencer's everywhere.
okay. It just like I would have to go in there like a lot of times bachelorette parties get sold like stuff there. But it's like all sex toys or all whatever, or walk past, um, you know, Victoria's Secret or any sex scene or any little thing. I was triggered constantly. So it was this, you know, this mind game of I can't watch that. I can't do that. And even today, like I don't have triggers. I'm not to watch. But I do things like if I live in a house of 4 girls, if we're watching a show, a sex scene happens to come on, you know, we don't typically go after raunchy stuff, but if a sex scene comes on, I know I could watch it and not be like, I want to watch porn. But I know watching it, my mind has done so much healing that I remind my mind of images. You know, I just don't want to give my mind any remembrance. I don't want any power. So I'll just go right to my phone and like check my email and check text messages. I'll stay off Instagram. I'll stay off any visual and just check, you know, again, emails typically is what I go to. That's to protect my brain. You know, again, I know I could watch it and not be tempted. But a month out of addiction, that would have spun me right back to the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So share a little bit about your ministry in what you do and what the name of it is and how you came up with that for the people that are just joining.
Yeah, so the ministry is called Storm and Armor, and it is a recovery resource for women. So I do mentoring. I'm about to release like an online course where you kind of work through it on your own. You take notes, you watch videos, you have a group accountability. Again, accountability is everything. Jesus is everything, and then accountability. But I am just passionate about women being known and knowing they're not alone, and giving them resources and just hope that I got out of it. I got out of a place I never thought I could get out from, and you can too. You know, Jesus had healing for me, and you can claim my testimony and have that healing for your story too.
What do you feel like there was a difference in your just your mood, your level of life, like your level of joy from when you were addicted to it versus now?
Yes. I've always been big personality, full of life. But when I was watching it, it was a very secretive part of my life. And I was kind of pretending versions all team, and I'm the captain. So here I am, sporty girl. But then I'm drinking my party friend, but I've got my church crew that I'm over here with, and this is, you know, I'm representing a different version of myself to them. And then I'm going home and I'm watching porn, and nobody knows about that. And so I remember just feeling exhausted and burnt out a lot, even though I'm full of life. Really tired, really exhausted, and now, you know, living with everything exposed, you know, open book, nothing's hidden, no shame. Um, it's a supernatural joy that you know, people are like, wow, you're so happy. Wow, why are you so giddy? And I believe it's what I used to have, just without porn and without addiction. And it's just, you know, tenfold now.
Someone did ask, and I think, and you did answer it, but someone asked, what did you replace that addiction with, if anything?
Good question. I think right after the addiction, like as I was just getting out of it, I'm not sure had anything to like substitute it other than just making myself really busy. So I knew like if I had free time, I would find myself watching porn. So how can I just keep my schedule super stacked, which is not good, but that's what I needed to do. That's what helped me. I live and die by my schedule, or I used to. And so I knew if I booked that out, that would help me really stay away from it. And so I would say in the meantime, kind of the replacement was keeping my schedule as full as I could so that I wouldn't have a moment to spare, a moment to watch porn. And then now, once I started telling people about it, being out of the addiction, that addiction piece turned into more of like a passionate piece about telling people about porn, telling people about porn recovery. I never thought I would be talking about porn as much as I do, you know, being out of it. But it silences it every time. It takes away, I hope, the shame for other people when I talk about it. And I hope people do see that, you know, my comfort in talking about it, that they can have that too, that they can walk that freedom too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you guys, while she is still on, click the question mark icon down there in the right-hand corner and ask her some questions. She's got, what, about 7 minutes left?
Yep.
So, and then if you guys have any, I mean, anybody that has any questions for her, feel free, because she's an open book. And I think a lot of the information she shared is incredibly valuable.
All right.
I do have a question that I'll ask if no one else asks right now. In what ways do you think the church can do better at helping defend against these things? I know Chris asked how we can stop our kids or how we can protect our kids from watching this, but in what way do you think the church can do a better job of addressing it and maybe counteracting some of these things?
Yeah, I think a bigger focus that the church does, and our a little bit, which has been cool, but I think it was something that it was taboo. We didn't want to talk about it. It's awkward. It's gross. Whatever the you know, kind of the blanket statement about porn is. Or they would talk about it with the adults or the young adults. But when kids are being introduced to this at 11 years old, I really, really believe, yes, it needs to be done in a strategic way. I talk to youth groups all the time, and even my junior high to my high school talk is very different. They're at different learning ages. They don't need to be exposed. You know, they're not as aware as the high schoolers are. But a lot of junior high ministries don't talk about it because they think the kids are too young. And at the end of the day, I want my future kids, I'd rather than be learning about it at church and from me than from their public school, from their public middle school, from their friends who are doing who knows what. So I do think the church needs to talk about it sooner. I do think it should be introduced in a prayerful, strategic way in junior high. You know, if we're seeing the stats are 11 years old, then we need to meet culture where it's at and get there and get that conversation before the public school or before their neighbor friends are.
Do you think, you've been studying this for a while now, I don't know exactly what the situation is with schools and stuff, but is it brought up? Is that topic something that is being like pushed or injected in schools today as a good thing? Like good thing in a worldly sense, bad thing in a spiritual sense, if you get what I'm saying.
I don't think it's anything like taught per se, like from the teachers. But I know it's very common that you know, kids are getting phones at 9 years old these days. So they are literally stumbling. Typically, you stumble into it, or you know, a lot of it can start with trauma, or you know, you saw your dad watching it, or you saw your mom watching it, or you saw a magazine, and then the kids get curious. But yeah, a lot of it is it's not being taught. You know, teachers aren't saying, "Hey, this is what porn is," but it is being wildly distributed, you know, and kids are talking about it and sharing phones and sending images.
Wow. Wow.
That is, yeah, it's, I heard a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard a story that a lot of school, I mean, you're in California, right?
Mm-hmm.
That some schools in California are teaching kids that, that like, oh, this is how you learn your body. Like they almost push it to them in a sense, you know, not directly, but kind of indirectly. And so I didn't know if that was anything you had heard of or anything like that.
Yeah, I've heard there's like contracts and stuff that teachers have to sign about if it's brought up or if it's a conversation floating, you know, in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers cannot condone it or cannot say it's bad. Basically, like, hey, this can be an educational tool. This can help you understand your body. I don't know if any like teacher, none of my teacher friends have told me about that. I've just heard like bills and laws and stuff starting to be passed in California, which we all know California is extreme. But yeah, another thing I recommend to kids is again, I'm years away from, you know, even being married. So kids are even beyond that. But there is a phone that looks like the iPhone, and it is an iPhone, I think. But it only has like texting, calculator. It has camera, but you can't take pictures. So like the kid can still fit in, you know, and look like they have an iPhone, but it's not, you know, not on Instagram, not sending pictures. They're not. So that's something that if I had a kid today,
Wow.
probably what I would have my kid with.
That
Or
is
they
good to know.
have a beeper.
That's good to know. I never knew that. Well, I know you said you stick to your schedule now, so I know you only have a minute left. For everybody that's watching, we have a link in our description, actually, under the Kaz TV that has an app called Remojo that keeps people off, and it helps you build accountability partners with people. And it's very useful, and I think that can help you in your fight against this. But most importantly, you know, like you said, is Jesus. It's God. And go ahead and let everyone know where they can find information about you and in your ministry.
I love it. Yeah. I think I'm on the IYKY dating Instagram. So I'm running that with Mel, so you can find me that way. But all porn related will be at Storm and Armor, and we can comment that or attach that. But I will talk all things. I would love to give you resources if you want to get connected to
Can you spell it out, because I'm going to type it in the comment and pin it so everybody can look for it.
Yeah, it's Storm, STORM, and AND, Armor, ARMOR.
Got you. Okay, I didn't know if there were any dots or anything right there.
And I would say, if you are a male and you don't have accountability or you need resources as well, you can reach out to me, but I will redirect you to a male. A lot of times guys reach out to me, hey, I need help with this addiction. I'm like, yes, you do, and I'm going to get you help. But it's not going to be.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree. I don't even know.
I don't think
they may not be looking for help if they're reaching out.
Yeah.
Like, why? What's so different? I'm like, this is not appropriate, but I have really great guy friends who would love to chat with you.
I know somebody that literally tried that with my wife before we were married. The whole like, hey, I need some prayer. Let's talk about like, and I tried to talk to him about it, and then it's like, I don't want
No, not you.
So I just feel more comfortable with her.
Yeah,
I bet you do.
Of course you do. She reminds you of some girl you saw in a video last night.
Yeah.
But yeah, awesome. Well, thank you again for hopping on, and you know, I know you're doing great things with the dating, and I think this is just equally as important. So thank you for hopping on and sharing that with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And like you picked it, if you guys want to reach out, happy to chat, give you resources, get you into a mentorship group, whatever we can, because healing is for you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys, so much. Have a good one.
You too.
You too.
So I have pinned her her Instagram page down below. Copy and paste it, and you'll find her page. And she has a ministry that, you know, goes into helping women in particular. And if you're a guy or a girl and you need accountability, there's an app that we have the link to in the bio. So just click on the profile, click the bio or the description, and you'll see a link there. Click that link, and for less than $4 a month, you can have an accountability partner that can see everything that you try to look at. If it's inappropriate, you're not, you know, bank statements or anything like that's not visible. But me, Chris, C-Love, we all hold each other accountable through that app, and it's done wonders for us. So I would recommend everybody go ahead and do that, because, you know, it's $3.50 a month worth you getting over it. Now, maybe you can get over without it, and that's even better. But for those of you that have struggled and hit your head against the wall, hit it against the wall, really check that out.
Yes. Check that out. Hit that link.
Hit the link. And Hafeez.
I was wondering who that was.
What's going on, man?
What's going on, fellas? You guys wrapping it up?
Well, with her, yeah.
We just getting started for round 2.
Round 2.
Yeah.
What's up, man? How you guys doing?
Good.
Good, man.
I know you had a really deep conversation with Jordan Peterson about this, and I know you probably have some nuggets of gold that he gave you, and we would love for you to share that on here. I know you probably saw the topic already.
Man, I wasn't prepared for this. But, you know, just talking, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
No, this was an interesting conversation. You know, I was watching most of it, and then I saw another video that's hilarious. I'm going to send it to Zach, but it's obviously not appropriate for this conversation. So I was kind of deterred a little bit. But no, this is a great conversation, because I think this is an issue that a lot of people deal with, and I think a couple years ago, like I said, I don't know how much you guys discussed, so I don't want to be too redundant. I don't want to just talk for the sake of talking. But a couple years ago, I did an article about a concept called porn gateways, and it was based upon this idea of gateway drugs. And most people, a lot of people will kind of debate the idea of gateway drugs existing, but when you talk to individuals who take very hard drugs, there's usually certain things they begin with, which leads them down the slippery slope cycle to whatever issue they're going through today. Mm-hmm. So I think an interesting conversation is really about for how the modern environment has created a lot of unhealthy gateways that lead to guys falling into the situations that they fall into, and women as well. I think that's one of the things that we don't talk about enough. And that's just something that I've seen happen for a lot of people, and it negatively affect their lives.
Well, and just for everybody that's just now joining, if you send a request to join the live, we will get to you, promise. So don't think we're ignoring you. But I remember one of the first people that really gave me the history on how a lot of this stuff came to be was actually you. When you talked about the sexual revolution and some guy who, like, I think he was so into so many things, I think he died jacking off or something. Huh?
No.
What?
Kinsey, I know you're talking.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, Alfred Kinsey.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, he died jacking off?
I don't know
Something
about
like
that
that.
part. I've been somebody else.
But share a little bit about the history of it, because anytime that I've really tried to explain it, when you explained it to me, it really was eye-opening. And just the analogy of like how when porn was introduced to the world, it was like an atomic bomb went off mentally to a lot of people.
So, man, I'm so rusty when it comes to this. Like I said, man. So please forgive me, guys. This is me freestyling. This is not gospel. This is just me trying my best to share my opinions on a subject matter I haven't studied in a long time. A couple of years ago, when I was doing some research, I was very interested in why so many people had sexual addiction, and I was very interested in why so many people were dealing with issues when it came to pornography and things along those lines. And I was very interested in why people had to go to like therapy. I thought that was very odd. Like, why do people have to go to therapy for this issue, and why is it such a big deal to address? And so what ended up happening was I ended up meeting a guy. I believe his name was Dr. Ted Roberts, freaking beast. He wrote a book, I believe, called Sexy Christians. Is an oxymoronical word, but a great book. So I was talking to Dr. Ted Roberts about this, and Dr. Ted Roberts, he counseled a lot of young men through addiction. He specialized in like high-end CEO, high-performing clients. And I was talking to him. I was like, Dr. Ted, you know, I'm a little confused, and I'm curious to your insight. Why is it that so many people are struggling today to the need of like going to rehab and therapy and things along those lines and needing all these additional support? I just don't see these systems being in place 1,000 years ago, and somehow human beings were able to, for my opinion, survive, thrive, and become, successful and not have all these issues. And what he described to me, like I said, it's been such a long time, but what he described to me is the biggest difference between now and then was that today there is an atomic bomb got dropped on a whole generation of people. And this whole generation of people are inflicted by this radiation poisoning. And now this radiation poisoning is causing them to have so many medical issues that it takes the same type of technological innovation that created this atomic bomb to now create the solution for these issues. So it's kind of like looking at kids in Hiroshima who lived after the atomic bomb was dropped there and saying, why do they have all these weird arms and weird things growing out of their necks? And why do they have all these medical, like, what's going on? Like, this wasn't here 1,000 years ago. You didn't understand what took place. So what Dr. Ted Roberts suggested is that what went on in the United States was that there was a natural process of sexualization that happened in the lives of men. And all of a sudden, all that was magnified 100-fold through the sexual revolution. So, you know, some people like him, some people don't like him. He has a whole institute named after him. It's a guy named Alfred Kinsey. And I believe he created something called the Kinsey Report. Like I said, I'm all foggy here. I'm trying my best. And I believe it was released post World War II, so 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kinsey Report, what the Kinsey Report did was it told the story of the sexual habits of the typical American adults. And there was another book that was written called Sex and the Single Woman. And it talked about the sexual habits of about the typical American female adult. Kinsey was specifically with male. And what both of these studies really showed was how hypersexual both people were. So in Kinsey's studies, I believe there was data where he said over 1/3 of farm boys have sexual experiences with farm animals. Like, this is how like crazy his worldview happened. And so
just for clarity for everyone like listening and stuff, essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but this guy wrote a book back in the early 50s saying, hey, I know you guys don't think this is normal, but like these guys are having experiences with animals and all this other kinds of stuff. And he kind of over exaggerated how sexual people were. And that's what you're explaining.
Yeah. So one of the feedbacks was that one of the pushbacks to Kinsey study was he did it mainly in the 1940s when a lot of American males were at war. So it wasn't even the best sample size of individuals that he was peaking from. But yeah, so we created these studies that really describe very hypersexual behavior going on with American men, which kind of pushed this idea of, okay, maybe the sexuality of young guys aren't as taboo. And in the book, Sex and a Single Woman, what the author of that book, she did was she talked about this hyper sexualization of women. And in her book, what she really described was like things where how women today have experiences with married men and all these other things. And a lot of what she taught about in her book is a lot of the foundational ideologies which created Cosmopolitan magazine. I believe she may have been one of the co-founders, but I could be wrong with that. So all these things really changed the trajectory of how sex was being taught in schools. The same way a lot of things when it comes to, you know, rainbow ideology changes the way gender is being taught in schools. The Kinsey studies and so much more that took place in the 50s and 60s, which really started the sexual revolution, it changed the way we understood sex and sexuality and what's permissible. So you started seeing more edgier things in movies. You started seeing more edgier things in TV shows. You started seeing the removal of censorship. So yeah, so the fundamental challenge now is that with all these innovations, what has now occurred is now you have these 12-year-old boys who open their computer and they see things that men have never seen for thousands of years. Like a man can see 100 women today in 30 minutes if he wanted to. 100 naked women in 30 minutes.
Right. True.
So going back to Dr. Ted Roberts' story, how can a 12-year-old boy and an unformed brain go online, see this? Like, think about it. Before, how often could you see people having sex? You have to be some kind of creepy peeping Tom to catch people having sex. Even the idea of like there wasn't no bedroom lights.
Right.
Back in the day, when the sun set, you went to sleep.
Right.
If you had your candle watching, you know what I mean? Like, so these things are not natural. This is not a natural occurrence.
And then how often, even not even having sex, but how often did the average man, like if we take it back to like, I don't know, 300, 400 years ago, how often did the average man even see a naked woman?
100%. And that's one of the things that he talked about. So you have this 12-year-old boy, he goes on the computer, all of a sudden, you know, he sees 100 naked women. What's going on with his brain, his development? But then all of a sudden, he's 18 years old. He's at church, and the pastor's telling him to stop watching porn. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Right.
So yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of what Dr. Ted Roberts was telling me in regards to why things are so much more difficult today than they've ever been 1,000 years ago. And now, I want to add, going back to the gateways, now the biggest, huge gateway, I feel like, is TikTok. It's TikTok.
Why you say that?
Huh?
Why you say TikTok is?
Well, first of all,
why TikTok over like Instagram or something like that?
Well, here's why. First, I see TikTok as being way more sexual. Maybe it's just me, and I could be wrong. I see TikTok being way more a sexually suggestive platform because it's videos. It's like going back to porn, right? Remember, there was a time in the day where you would, go to the gas station and ask for the hustler, like those times. those times they we go to the gas station, all those magazines are filled up, you know, like no one's buying them. That's the real creepers, you know, like you have video now. So I see that a lot of times with TikTok, you have a lot of this. The girls, basically, the girls who dress half naked on Instagram now are dancing half naked on TikTok. Way more stimulation.
Right.
And then the fundamental problem with TikTok, which is why I never use it. I never use it. Only time I've ever posted on it was I hired someone to do it for me. I never go on the platform. Even if I open the app, I never go to the explore page, which is why I think Instagram is doing something wrong as well with their new feature. But the thing about TikTok is TikTok gives you content. You know what I mean? So the difference between pre-Instagram, pre-updates is that if I was not following this, I can go on my homepage and scroll and never see it. I would have to go on the explore page to actually find those women. The problem with think about it, if I'm a 10-year-old boy and I created TikTok today, imagine what
it's going to come to you.
It's going to come to you. And that's the difference. It's one thing when you're scrolling naked girls in bikinis. You know what I mean? It's one thing when
you're searching for it.
But now it's like you're just 10-year-old. You see maybe your cousin is on TikTok doing a dance. Like, oh, well, I want to do a dance too. You open TikTok. Next thing you know, you have this half-naked girl dancing, bouncing, and it's a wrap. Your brain is just whoa. Because think about it. Like, I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. Like, imagine you looking at a girl in real life as long as you look at her on Instagram. So let's say, imagine you're on Instagram, you're looking at a girl's picture. You're looking at a picture probably for about 5 seconds. You know, you might zoom in here and there. You're really getting deep into it.
Right.
If you saw that girl in real life, if you looked at her for that long, she not only would be freaked out by you, but everybody else would be like, bro, what's wrong with this guy? Why are you looking like that? But now you can do that online. You can do that online. And so to me, it's just a lot of things are just not natural. It's hyperstimulation. And unfortunately, young men, young boys and girls are powerless against it. And I got so much on this because you got me going.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And the last thing, because I sent Zach a few jokes, and it's obviously I have a dark humor, so it's not appropriate to send jokes about this serious topic. But this also what leads to a lot of the sexual fluidity of women today.
What do you mean by that?
So, like, a lot of women.
Yeah.
You said what?
Go ahead. We actually brought that point up while a friend was on earlier.
What you say?
She said she didn't experience that, but it is in like psychology papers and things like that.
Yeah. Because going back to pornography for women, majority of women don't watch heterosexual pornography. Similar to what she was communicating, the
storyline
structure of the videos is not interesting for heterosexual women, generally speaking. Most women watch female-to-female pornography because the story, not just the story, but the act is more sensual and a little bit more intriguing for them. And so there's just so many layers to even women seeing half-naked women all the time. You know what I mean? You're seeing half-naked women all the time. You're seeing these women's body parts being flaunted before you all the time. All these are gateways for men and women alike. It's not just the men that are being affected by it. And so I just believe a lot of this stuff is just not natural. And when you see people struggling, you don't realize, man, it's like somebody coming out of Hiroshima who's been, living there for 10 years post Big Boy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it goes back to the history you were describing, because I know someone who they caught their son watching porn. This was like, my wife was sharing this with me a couple weeks ago. And the dad was like, hey, we're not watching porn in this house. I'll get you a magazine if you want. And I was thinking, okay, it's kind of the same thing, but
Right.
it is kind of like what you were saying. It's almost like, from a biblical perspective, I don't want to say any of it's okay, but it's almost like, I could see why he's saying that. He's trying to wean them off of that, because when you go from, think about it, when you go from a frozen picture and you're like, I want to see the motion. Let's see something.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, Instagram versus TikTok. And so when you're so used to seeing the real thing, there's like, Playboy almost seems like that's not a big
It
deal.
desensitizes you.
Yeah,
Right.
it desensitizes you, and I think that's why, Hafeez, you sent me like that picture. You were in downtown Atlanta, and there was a guy and a girl kissing, and spit was all coming. It almost looked disgusting, but it's just like, back in the day, that would be considered almost like erotic, not appropriate for kids, adult store type of things, and now it's so normal, and this is all within the past 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. It's true, and it's just a lot of things that are going on, and even in regards to the secular arguments against porn, because a lot of things like NoFap and things like that are more secular arguments. To me, one of the things that we see is a rise in what's that crap called? Erectile dysfunction in men under the age of 30.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Like, huge thing now.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sexual wiring of the brain is now like messed up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Porn, like it turns it off for
Yeah.
the real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that these are all interesting conversations that need to be had. And to me, it's very sad. I'm very sad. I guess I'm saddened by all the young people who deal with this for a lot of years, and their parents know nothing about it. You know, it's
Right.
and it's so,
Or,
yeah.
hey, I think there's also a community out there where, not that the parents don't know about it, the parents almost endorse it, right? Because, men, it's like, oh, we all do it. So, hey, just do it. Make sure, you close, you're in the shower, whatever, you closed off and you go do your thing, right? So I think there's a large, community of even Christians, right, that gets okay, right? That don't see it's necessarily a problem.
You think
You
so?
know? Yeah, I know so. I've had conversations with a lot of people that, claim to be Christian and stuff that just don't necessarily, because they feel like, hey, it's a natural urge and I'm not having sex. So, like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? So that's their, kind of justification. And I've been, when I was younger, I kind of thought of that as a justification too. So I think there's a community of people that don't see nothing necessarily wrong with it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I figured it was just habits that were hard to break, but everybody kind of agreed with that. Wow.
Well,
We have,
think
okay, let's see. We got a couple people requesting to join. Let's see, what else, man? You have a lot of good
I got a question for
information
Hafeez.
about this.
Yo.
oh,
So, like, how do you personally, or just in general, like, how do you combat it? How do you beat it? Right?
Me?
Yeah, like just speaking to men that are struggling with this, how do you overcome this?
So when I was younger, I realized I was the biggest like pharisaical person when it came to guys who were struggling with pornography addiction, because I never struggled with it. Because in all honesty, I think I never really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
And so my natural response was I just didn't like it. So even like I never had like experiences where I had like a binger where I just watching 10 videos at a time in my life. Like it usually was correlated with just feeling of really shame and unhappiness. So it never, I realized for me, it wasn't really a problem. I would call it, in my earlier years, I would call it, I had an addiction. And I think it's important because to use the correct terminology, not everyone has an addiction. The smallest amount of people have an addiction. I think sometimes in the Christian church, we call what these guys are doing an addiction, but it's not really an addiction, you know? And so an example, and I'm going to answer your question. There's this great book named Lost Connections by Johann Hari. He's a freaking beast. And in the book, he talks about, he's a genius. I love this guy so much. I'm on the podcast. We recorded with him a couple weeks, so he should be on next couple weeks. So Johann talks about an idea, or he talks about a very popular story, and the popular story. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a popular story about where they were studying the effects of crack cocaine. So it's a popular study where they were studying the effects of crack cocaine. So what they did was they took a rat, they put a rat in a cage, and they gave it some crack. And they watched what would happen with the rat for like 5, 10, 15, 20 days, right? What eventually they found out was that the rat, by day 20, he don't even eat, he don't drink, all he wants is that crack. You know what I mean? It's like Tyrone from the Chappelle Show. He's just going crazy. And then all of a sudden, like, you see, like, the rat starts eating himself. He just, and so that study communicated that crack and cocaine, technically cocaine wasn't crack, cocaine was really bad for people, which is kind of true, right? I want to go down that path, but it's kind of true. So there's a new study that was done, and it was a study called Rat Paradise. And what they did instead of, what they realized was, in the previous study, they kept the rat in a cage with food, water, and nothing else. I believe rats are like pack animals, where they're not supposed to be by themselves. Same as dogs, which I don't want to get into it, how people today are committing crimes who have dogs. I don't want to get into that. I'll stay on the topic. But they're pack animals. They're pack animals. And so the idea behind that is that they function well with other people. So they say, you know what? Instead of keeping the rat by himself and isolating him with food and water, let's give him everything a rat needs. So they created Rat Paradise. So in Rat Paradise, it wasn't a small cage. It was a big, giant space. And in this big, giant space, you had wheels, you had all kinds of toys, you had a bunch of girls that were ready to get down, like everything a rat could need. And then you had some cocaine in the place. What they found out was the rats rarely ever got addicted to cocaine. And the reason the rats really ever got addicted to cocaine, because the rats were experiencing so much good in life. They were having so much fun and having so much other stimulation that they weren't going to these vices, because there's other natural, healthy pleasures that they could experience. Now,
they didn't have anything. They didn't have anything they were trying to escape from.
Yeah.
Right.
So going back to Chris's question about helping guys overcome addiction, the guys who struggle the most are the guys who are in isolation. The guys who are hurt. The guys who don't have a lot going on. The guys who don't have many friends. The guys who are simply trapped in these cages. In the cages. There's a reason why when COVID happened, Pornhub's revenue quintupled. Because everybody had nothing else to do.
Right.
And so to me, what I realized, the very first thing, if a guy is genuinely struggling, because there's a difference between guys who watch it and fall and guys who cannot stop watching it, right? And so the very first thing that I've realized is, what is your environment like? Do you have any friends? Do you have hobbies? Do you have things that are releasing dopamine in your mind besides vices? And what happens is a lot of people don't have any of that. And so that's why they're struggling so much. A lot of people, and I'm going to get to it with women, a lot of men have no positive interactions with women. One of the things I talked about was how you got to think about it, like men and women, we're meant to be together.
Right.
We're meant to get feminine energy and women are meant to get masculine energy. So if you're a guy and you're not being around any women all day long and have no female company, it's easy to go to XXX75 online and to get some attention from her, you know? And so when it comes to dealing with these addictions and these issues, for the ones that are really dealing with addictions, we have to ask guys what your environments are like. And do you have positivity around you? Because when you do have positivity around you, no one's perfect. No one's perfect. No one's saying you're going to be perfect. But I guarantee you, if you look back at the times you struggled the most, you were probably mad. You probably were angry. You probably were
disappointed.
So what?
Disappointed.
Disappointed. Probably something happened with football where you didn't get what you wanted.
Man.
Stressed.
When you and then what did you do as a man? When
Alone.
men fail, so what?
You go alone.
Men fail, like Zach said, they go in isolation. That's what men. It's like this walk of shame, like you're banished out the village. We kind of train our. Back in the day, you used to banish the men. You know, exile, like in Lion King 2. Get out of here. But now,
Right.
the men are so conditioned, they just banish themselves.
Right.
You know?
That's real though.
That
That's
song,
real.
that
Yeah.
song starts playing in their head. They said here, deception.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So Hafeez, like with the rat experiment, like you said, they created a rat paradise to where they was experiencing so much joy they wouldn't turn to these things, right? However, unfortunately, our lives is a lot more complicated than that, right? There's gonna be ups, there's gonna be downs, there's gonna be disappointments, you know, there's things we're gonna have to go through, right? So how does a man not do that, right? Not internalize that hurt or that pain or that feeling and not turn to porn. Because I know for me, in undergrad, when I was, man, let's say I had a bad practice, right? I'll be like, man, you know, you kind of just throw the day away. Be like, I'll just, you know, I'll start over tomorrow, right? And that's what it was sometimes, right? And so how does a man, a young man that's kind of like still struggling this and fighting this, that's going to go through ups and downs, how does he combat that with something positive or something that's going to, you know, ultimately help him and not destroy him?
Now, I love what you said, Chris. And to me, I think that's where there's a journey a man goes through where he falls more times, right? So I think what you're describing is like the story of life. The story of life is that you get knocked down, you stay, then people come alongside you, give you positive ways, and you begin to learn it as a man, right? You begin to learn healthier methodologies, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's calling your, whether that's finding other positive things that make you feel good. So you kind of, the same thing like with addiction, right? So the idea is that like if you're alcoholic, and when you're sad, you go to alcohol, or let's say you smoke cigarettes, and when you're sad, you go to cigarettes. The first thing that you got to do is what is a healthy alternative that you can go to
Right.
this in the meantime, you know? And
Right.
so every man has to figure out what that is. What is that? What is it? And one of the things I tell guys is one thing you guys have to do is call somebody on the phone. You have to call somebody. When you're down, when you're lonely, when you get that urge, because unless you know you're a little bit different, a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Talking to a man on the phone is going to make that urge go away.
Real quick.
Yeah, you said it.
Unless you're different.
Okay.
So to me, I think that's one of the things that you got to go ahead and do is and then as you get older, you get better at it. You know, the thing about pornography is I believe a lot of different things about it. I believe for some people, it is a lifelong battle. And it's a lifelong battle because of just the addictive nature of it. You know, it's kind of like, imagine if every single day What's your favorite snack, Zach?
Favorite snack? Say apples.
Twice.
Let's say apples.
Apples. What about you, Chris?
Cotton candy.
See, love.
Birthday cake, Rice Krispie treats.
I love it. So think about it like this. Imagine if you guys are all great shape, muscular, athlete type. But you understand the importance of health and fitness. Imagine if every single day you have a client, you let's say got out of shape, you're trying to get in shape. And every single day you open the cabinets, get some food, and there was a Rice Krispie there. There was cotton candy every single day. Every day you were sad and you were upset, there was a Rice Krispie treat laying on your bed. Every single day you were frustrated about life, there was cotton candy on the couch. That's kind of what pornography is to a lot of men, because it's your phone.
Right.
And as much as there's blockers, everybody knows you're a few away from all them hacks, blocks all the way.
Yeah, you take it to the local geek squad. Hey, get this thing off my phone.
Right.
And so to me, I think there is a lifelong battle. I don't want to say struggle. I'm gonna say a battle that men have to be able to overcome, and it takes conversations like these and honesty and transparency for each guy to figure out exactly what it's going to take for him to be successful.
Right. And I agree with you on that, because it takes you having to die to yourself every day, right? To get rid of that, that lustful temptation, because it's temptations all around us, right? I like going to the gym. There are women in there, got the little bra thing on, with the short shorts, doing squats. It's temptation is all around us. So it really takes the mental and spiritual aspect of it to just kill it, in your mind, and just die to yourself every day.
I love what C Love said, and the thing I want to add, Chris, is that one of the things also I realized for a lot of guys is this idea of cycling. And so, not cycling, spiraling.
Okay.
Is that what happens for a lot of guys is when they have the hiccup, they're like, screw it. They're like, screw it, and they just binge weekends, months.
Yeah. That quicksand.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
The day's over. The day's already over. We'll start again tomorrow.
Oh, the month's over. Oh, the year's over. I might as well just...
Year's over.
Might as well.
Exactly. And so to me, that's one of the things that also men have to be aware of, that, these things happen. You have your rough days, but you cannot allow those moments to happen, because that's what perpetuates more and more of the problems that are going on.
I always say, man, we just got to win the day, right? So, you might fall, you might slip up on one day, but, man, that next morning, you got a new day, a new opportunity, and if you just focus on winning that day, right, you're going to look up and be like, okay, well, we something, right? Not that you get lackadaisical or anything, but now you're building that momentum, right? If you just throw away a day, that comes a week, and that comes a month, and then that comes a year, it's like you just keep reinforcing the bad habit.
I love it. I agree.
Okay. Let's see. We got some questions here, and then I promise everybody that's in the room, I will bring you on.
You made a big promise.
I promise. I'll bring them on.
All 100 people. Zach got you. One by one.
Zach got you.
How did you gain the courage to talk about your addiction when that's something that was hidden from most people around you? And I'm assuming that was for the lady that was on earlier. It just now popped up. One thing that she said is she realized, and you can go to her page. It is Storm and Armor on Instagram, and she shares her testimony there. But from my understanding, she said that she realized that the sin was growing best in the dark, and that when she actually opened up a little bit with people years later, because she didn't open up with anyone until like over a year after she was already out of it. And then she said that once she did that, that's when she realized people didn't think she was weird or anything like that. And her fear was that she thought people would think she's weird. Let's see. Next question. In what ways do you feel the Holy Spirit fills that empty space? In other words, the spiritual route I heard you speak about the natural, if that makes sense. I guess that was to her too. I don't really understand the question, but I know she did say that she filled that gap of the longing and wanting to know what's going on. She recognized that it was a lie that was causing her to slip up and turn to porn.
And then I think she also mentioned that she had to like replace that time to where she was doing, because the idle mind is a devil's playground. So she had to like replace constructive good things with that time.
Yeah. And what I wanted to add was, I think sometimes religious people make the mistake of over spiritualizing natural issues. And I think there is a beautiful hope in God for keeping healthy peace in the midst of chaotic experiences. But I think there's also this unhealthy, to me, unnatural expectation where you don't acknowledge the natural feelings. And you just simply think that God is enough to make it go away. Instead of understanding what are these natural feelings and how can I find healthy ways of alleviating them. So let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you eat bad. You're always eating bad. And you're like, you know what, man should not live by bread alone. He should live by every word from the mouth of God. So now I'm not going to eat at all. Right? Because I'm eating bad. I'm eating bad stuff. Now I'm just going to trust in God and never eat. For some people, maybe the Holy Spirit empowers you so much to fill your cells with all the vitamins and nutrients. And some people, maybe that works. But for most people, they'll die. You'll die. And you've gone from one end to another end, right?
Extreme. Yeah.
So to me, it's about understanding what are the natural feelings what are the natural feelings that are inside me that I'm using sin to appease, and therefore, what are the natural ways that God has given me to where it's meant to be appeased from, right? And so an example of that to me is just like guys and their struggle with pornography is that, some of it is lust, some of it is addiction, some of it is bad environments, but to me, a lot of it is men are not meant to be single in their 30s with no women.
We want women.
Yeah, you're made to have a wife. You're made to have these sexual experiences. And so, same with a woman, like you're feeling lonely, you want to be loved, you want to be isolated, so you go to pornography. Well, you're not meant to be lonely and isolated, and you're meant to have a person with you. And so I think sometimes we don't, I'm never saying don't do the praying and asking God to fill us up. We also have to acknowledge what natural desires that God has placed in our heart, and then what are we using sin to fill that desire with, and then what are the natural ways that God has provided for us to experience. And when you have these natural experiences that satisfy you, all of a sudden now what begins to happen is that now the temptation for a lot of the vices aren't as strong in your everyday lives.
All right.
Yeah, and I just to clarify everything he's saying, for the people that just hopped in, he's not saying that there is a healthy level of porn. He's saying that the desire to want to be intimate and to want to have sex isn't a bad desire. The thing that is, what happens is that the devil or the world and the flesh will pervert a good desire that's there and use it for a wrong purpose that it was never designed to be used for. And when something is used for the incorrect purpose, it doesn't fulfill that purpose well, and it causes to harm and things that are not good for you. So is that a good summary of what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So, say if you're waiting until marriage, but you're in the mood and you want that feeling, isn't it better to masturbate than to have sex outside of marriage and lose your virginity? So, me and we've talked about this before, Hafeez, and we've had some of those level 5 discussions or whatever you want to call them. I would say that at the end, you got to look at where your heart posture is. So the key thing that I see here is you're saying you're in the mood and want that feeling. And then you're basically saying, I want this feeling. So because I want this feeling, I'm going to do one of these two things. And so which one should I do, this or that? And I think the only bad thing about that is I'm not saying the feelings aren't there. I'm not saying I haven't given into those feelings. I'm not saying I haven't made both of those choices. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is that if you're trying to live the life that God has called us to live, which no one will live perfectly, so I'm not putting that on you. The only thing you want to be careful of is you don't want to say, hey, because I have this feeling, I'm going to do one of these two things. I don't think God ever justifies our actions by saying, hey, you have this feeling, pick one that's going to be less bad. I think that our feeling, the first thing we should go to should be, okay, like Hafeez said, why am I having this feeling? What's the real reason for this feeling? And then in what ways is God providing a natural way of escape rather than the one that he's going to be, that hurts him a little less. And so I think the way you're looking at that question isn't the complete picture of all the options you actually have. I think there's more than just those two options.
And just like touching on that because I know she said losing your virginity too. I mean, I think that and the devil has, convinced me in my past, like sometimes that you can try to justify, oh, well, I'm not really having sex, so I'm just gonna watch porn. That's less bad, right? But the damage that porn does I mean, obviously it's a sin as well, but it does damage to you internally, right? So you really have to be very careful when you start to try to justify sins because that's not of God, right? Even in mentally, and I know it's hard in the moment, right? So I would just say you have to find ways to dismiss that thought immediately, and then, like you said, kind of examine your heart, right? I knew for me, every time like that thought would that thought would kind of pop in my head, I would always be like, it always stemmed from like a lack in trust in God, right? Of waiting for my wife that she's going to be this phenomenal, waiting that she's going to come, whatever, because you're waiting, right? And you're trying to wait and you're trying to do all these things. But it gets hard, right? It gets hard. So you really have to, I know for me, I had to kind of sit back and be like, God, like, do I really trust that, this way is the best way for me, right? And yeah, he's given me all these, desires and stuff like that, but I have to be able to control it in this season. So when that time comes and I am able to do those things, then I'm able to enjoy it the way he intended it to.
So I got a question for you guys. Because she said something about the feeling, right? So what would you say to the person that, I don't even know if this is like an actual thing, but the person that doesn't need to necessarily watch porn, but they're into the actual motion of like masturbation and the feeling of masturbation?
The dark arts.
So you're saying, hold on. So you're saying like you're masturbating without watching porn?
Basically that guy that says like, I can jack off and I'm not thinking about anything lustful. I'm just doing it for the feeling, just like scratching my back.
Is that even a thing?
I know someone personally that literally, I mean, Hafeez, you know about this guy. I know someone personally that at Troy, he told me, he said, Zach, he said, yeah, I've mastered being able to do this without thinking lustful thoughts, and I'm good. And then he calls me like, a week later and he's like, man, I binged on this video or whatever, you know, my mind like went all over the place and I had to see it, you know? And so I think, I think that is one of those, I honestly think it's one of those like lies from the enemy that says, you can all, I mean, you're not jumping off the cliff, just go over there and look down. And his hope is maybe one of those rocks will like fall and then you'll fall down. You know what I mean? So I don't think that I don't think that our thoughts should be like, how close can we get to the edge? Where is the edge actually? I think we should just be focused on, let me try to walk towards the light and the truth that is in Christ. And even though I'm not going to do it perfectly, every time I look away, let me try to look back. I think that's more so what we should be trying to do, if that makes sense. I saw that one had a lot of people cracking up. Okay, let's see. We got a couple other questions. Okay, so for some people, corn was considered sex education, but the visuals of it have created unrealistic expectations of intimacy. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if you have freaking, you know, Long Larry, you know, on the video or whatever, like, you know, it's like, what? That's an unrealistic expectation.
Wait, say the question again.
She basically said, does it create unrealistic expectations? Because some people look at it for like education purposes, and then she said, does it create an unrealistic expectation? And if you're in certain categories, you know, some of those expectations is like the 1%.
Right. Yeah, like you said, Long Larry, and he's going for hours. Like, come on, man, we don't have time for that. No, a real man doesn't have time. Like, come on, man.
You sound like Kevin Samuels.
Come on, man. Let's be real.
Let's
be real.
Like watching pornography for sex education, is like watching kung fu movies for self-defense advice.
Right,
man. That's on point, bro.
Yeah, it's just where someone catches a bullet or something like that. You know.
Right. It's like she said, it's a movie. Like it's entertainment. It's not real, right? Like,
and it goes both ways for men and women.
Yeah. So
what do you mean?
Definitely.
Like you can get an unrealistic expectation of women too just by watching it. You know, to think every woman reacts a certain way when they're having sex, or to think they all look like this, you know, after being airbrushed and plastic surgery and all those different things, right? You can get like an unrealistic expectation of it.
Right. Like you expect a woman to do all sorts of tricks and like twist and and she might not be able to do that.
Right. So
and they get mad. And they get mad if we're not.
And
that leads to disappointment, right? Like in real life for a man. He's disappointed. You
turn back to porn.
Right. There you go.
Yeah. It's like porn's always had my back type of thing. So let's see what we got. Let's see what we got here. If you and your boyfriend are waiting till marriage and he stays the night and you guys are watching a movie where you guys are by yourselves and he starts kissing on you and rubbing on you, how do you shut those emotions down so you don't end up having sex? I think you probably don't put yourself in that situation first of all. But you're saying if you're already in that situation and that's going on, you're saying what would you do? You just hope you're covered. Hope you're covered.
Well, I mean, I think you have to. Let's look at it from a proactive standpoint, right? Like you have to set good boundaries, right? So if you know that that normally happens, right? Because, you know, both y'all human. I get that, right? So if you know that happens around 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, then you got to be like, hey, we just can't hang out at that time, right? And whatever that boundaries, I'm a firm believer that boundary is different for everybody, right? Some people can kiss on the neck and be good and not take it there, right? Some people can't kiss. that's your boundary. You have to be very self-aware to know, hey, this is where the line stands, and you have to be very open and vocal about that with your partner, right? If that is both of y'all goal, right? Y'all make sure y'all on the same page. Then you're just saying, hey, what are your boundaries, and what is his boundaries, and make sure you don't personally do anything that's going to, I guess, reach his boundaries, right? If you know that he can't see you in a certain thing, right, past a certain time, then don't wear that past a certain time, right? And vice versa. It works both ways. So I think you have to be very proactive in, one, being aware of your boundaries, but two, voicing that and making sure y'all on the same page.
I don't think you need to get so legalistic about it, but you need to do whatever you need to do to stop that. And I know personally, at least for me, if I'm in that moment, it's hard to stop. When me and my wife were engaged, I remember, I would call Hafeez a couple times. And I was like, dude, like I'm standing on the ledge looking over and I feel like jumping, and I was like, I know if I look at the ledge one more time, I'm jumping off the cliff. And so I knew personally I wasn't strong enough to be in that situation. So I had to put more boundaries in for myself. Am I saying that you have to do that? Otherwise, you're not going to do this or that? No, I don't want to be legalistic about it, but I think you should be honest about where you're at. And the best way to do that is to look at what you've done so far.
I agree. I'm about to head out. I got a flight to catch. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Appreciate hopping on. Hopefully you guys continue to inspire with these great conversations. You guys have a great night. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. Hey,
All right, man.
safe travels,
Appreciate
bro.
you coming on.
Hopping on.